On today's Locked On Jayhawks, last week we posed the question, who will be the best player on KU? This week we ask, who's going to be the leading scorer?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can give me a follow on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. He's Nick Schwerdt. You can give him a follow at Nick_Schwerdt. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to be discussing who's going to be the leading scorer, who are the candidates to do it for the Kansas basketball team in 2024 to 2025. We'll do another episode of Who Cares, featuring some Big 12 football media day stuff, some KU basketball stuff, and we'll finish up with whose stat line is it anyway, going into a stat to see if Nick can give it a guess. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like you want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can get in on the Scottish Open or whatever you want to do right now. Visit FanDuel.com and get started today. Okay, so we're going into, this could be a similar question to the one we posed last week. In fact, there's probably going to be two of the main names that we brought up last week who are going to be the same ones this week. But I'm curious if there's any opening for a different name on this week. Leading scorer for this year's team. Is this Hunter Dickinson is like an easy favorite, or are you willing to entertain somebody else?
If I were doing Vegas odds, I think I would have Hunter Dickinson at like plus 150, plus 200. Do you think that's a fair number?
I almost wonder, would he be like negative odds? Would he be like minus 120 or something like that?
I don't think so, because you go back to last year, he averaged about 18 a game. That's only about a point more than what AJ Storr did at Wisconsin. Kevin
McCullough averaged more points per game last season, like when he played. So,
yeah, and look, I think that's a really good way to kind of try and answer what it's going to look like next year. Is look at what happened with Kevin McCullough. I don't think that was by design. I don't think Bill Self intended on Kevin McCullough being the leading scorer. It was that the offense got so stagnant at times, and they had a really tough time creating opportunities, that he was really the only guy who could not only handle the ball, but create his own shot. So AJ Storr fits that mold, but I think in an ideal world, you don't have to get into those quote unquote hero ball moments as much if the offense is running the way you want it to, which is going to be predicated on getting Hunter Dickinson touches in the post. So I think in an ideal world, the coaching staff wants Hunter Dickinson to be the leading scorer. I can still foresee a scenario where AJ Storr is that guy and KU's still a really good team. But I think because of how we know they want to play, Hunter Dickinson has still got to be the answer.
I agree. I think it's the vanilla answer. I think it's the right answer. But if, like what you were saying, if you were doing Vegas odds on it, like what number would you need to be tempted to take AJ Storr? Because to me, honestly, as low as like, I don't know, plus 250, I'd probably be comfortable taking a shot in the dark there.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably close to what it would be. It's kind of like golf odds, right? It's like there's going to be a grouping of guys who are going to be tightly packed up at the top.
It's like, I don't want to bet Scotty Scheffler 4-1. I'd rather take my shot on somebody who's 30-1, and maybe I only win once every 6 weeks, but I'm going to make more money, right?
Right, but that's just it. If we're putting in these hypothetical odds, if we've got Hunter at plus 200 and AJ Storr at plus 250 or plus 300, is AJ Griffen at plus 1,000? Is Zeke Mayo at plus 1,400? Because those are the numbers I'd be more interested in.
Okay, so which of those dark horses, if I did tell you that AJ Storr and Hunter Dickinson, like I looked into the crystal ball and I saw that they finished second and third on KU in scoring next season, which guy would you go to be that answer?
For third?
No, for the leading scorer. If I told you that somebody else usurped the pack.
It would be AJ Griffen. I think we talked about this a little bit.
Rylan Griffen?
What was that? Yeah, Rylan Griffen. What did I say?
AJ
Griffen. Yeah, I think it would be Rylan Griffen because he has enough tools in his bag, I think, to be able to get it done. Zeke is interesting, but I'm just not sold yet because of the level that he's coming from. Like Rylan Griffen was starting for a Final Four team. That's a lot different than coming from South Dakota State. So I'm just kind of trying to picture it in my head. Like, how does the season go? How does this guy look in a Kansas uniform? And how does he wind up being, a 20-point per game score? Because that's probably what it's going to take. Like, it's going to be a race to 20, because I do think there will be a 20-point per game score on this team. Go back to Jalen Wilson 2 years ago, taking that big leap, and he was the team's leading offensive threat. He shot it 15 plus times a game. That's going to be the difficult part, is to get to that total. You got to take a lot of shots, Derek. It'd be great if you got to 20 points and you were just the most efficient offensive player in the country, but that seems unlikely. So it'd have to be Rylan Griffen, and it would get to that point because he's the guy who we think AJ Storr is going to be. He's the guy who's going to come in and be able to create his own shot, shoot 42% from 3-point range, and also, finishing in transition, getting to the line, etc. Because you have to do it in a lot of different ways if you're going to get to that 20-point mark.
Yeah, I think for Rylan Griffen to do it, it would have to look kind of like how Ochai Agbaji got there, to near that 20-point per game mark, right? You're shooting a lot of threes. You're shooting that really high percentage. I think that would be the answer for me, too, for what it's worth. And I think there is something to the idea of, you have this kid in Rylan Griffen who was, top 60 recruit in the country, something like that, right around there. And you didn't play a ton as a freshman year. You really showed a lot of progress in year 2. So the natural inclination is, can you make that same jump from year 2 to year 3? And if that does happen, then I think you are in discussion, right? That kind of becomes the question. Is the version of Rylan Griffen Kansas is getting this year the same version of Rylan Griffen last year, which, to be clear, that would still be very helpful for what this Kansas team needs? Or is it one that takes another step forward? And if it is, then I think that kind of is in the discussion. But it's weird because I also think, okay, if you were saying who has the highest floor as opposed to ceiling for scoring the most points on the team, number 1 and number 2 would be Hunter Dickinson and AJ Storr in whatever order you want to talk about. Probably Hunter 1, AJ Storr number 2. I actually think in terms of the floor, the ceiling, there's no way. We didn't even toss this guy's name out, and I don't think there's any way it would happen. But the floor, I think KJ Adams would have to be third, because what you're going to get from KJ. It's going to be between 10 to 13 points.
I don't know that. Honestly, I don't, because I don't know how much he's going to play, Derek. Do you let's start here. How many minutes per game do you think KJ Adams? Forget whether or not you think he's going to start. How many minutes for KJ this year?
I'm gonna sort of answer that question with a question. How many players does Kansas even have who can play the 4?
The 4 is made up. There's no such thing. It's true. Who are the 5 best 4s in the NBA? It's a made up position. They don't exist anymore. We thought that the center was dead, Derek. It's not. The center is not a dinosaur. The power forward doesn't exist. There are wings, right? There are bigs who can step out. There really aren't 4s anymore. So, and mind you, KJ Adams isn't even a 4. It's can he play the 4? Yeah. Well, why can he play the 4? Because he's got big muscles.
Sure.
I don't know. 6'7"? Are those the qualifications?
Is Bill Self going to be comfortable playing 6'5", 180-pound Rylan Griffen as your basically second largest person on the floor? I don't think he is. I think it's AJ Storr and KJ Adams. I think those are the only guys you're going to really play at the 4. I really do. If you want to talk about Zach Clemens, that's another discussion. Some people think they're playing too big basketball. I don't think that works. Yeah, so I think we're kind of on the same page there. I think there is an inherent floor to what he's going to play.
But you know what? No, I'm actually going to stop you because you brought up the measurables for Rylan Griffen, and AJ Storr, I think, is shorter, but probably weighs more. KJ's what? 6'6", 215, 220? I
think he's much more than 220. Have you seen that dude's muscles? He's 240.
Okay. All right. And please tell me, and how was his size? Because that's what we're talking about here, size. How did he use his size to his advantage last year? KJ,
point.
I like KJ. I want to make it very clear. I was a KJ apologist coming into last season, and now over the course of this offseason, I feel like I've had to kind of flip to push back on some of the ideas that nope, pencil him in for 30 a night. He's the guy. It didn't work last year. I don't know how else to break this down. It didn't work at all. KJ and Hunter. I don't think he's going to play as much because he's undersized. He has T-Rex arms. He can't use his size to his advantage defensively. Yes, he has good leaping ability. He can dunk. He can finish inside. He is strong. Totally understand that. If you could take that out of the equation offensively and give me a guy who can shoot 35% from three and then say it's like a wash on defense, who are you taking? Like, KJ's still going to play, don't get me wrong. But I don't think he's playing 25 plus minutes a night. And if you tell me he's playing 18 to 20, that's fine, but he's not scoring 10 points a night if that's the case.
Okay. I think I would take that. I think I would take bet KJ to finish top 3 in points. Top four in points per game on next year's team. We'll get there. Top 4. All right. Let's get on to another segment of Who Cares, going into some more KU basketball stuff with Hunter Dickinson, going into some Big 12 football media days on Locked On Jayhawks. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I love sports. You love them so much, but you never want them to stop. And as the playoffs have gone away here, we're kind of in that sports doldrum. But FanDuel lets you keep going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And honestly, there has been a lot still going on during the summer. You've got, if you're into soccer, the Euro and Copa. We got the Olympics coming up here. Baseball's going strong. We got golf tournaments. We got the British Open or the Open, however hoity-toity you want to be, is coming up next week. Scottish Open's this week. Still plenty going on. You can get futures on the football season upcoming. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's get to another episode of Who Cares. I'm going to give you 2 topics. You tell me which one you care more about and why. First up, I don't know if you saw, KU basketball tweeted out a, highlight reel of them practicing. And 2 things stood out to me. One, Rakease Passmore threw down a cool dunk. The other one, Hunter Dickinson was rocking a headband. Which of those do you care more about?
So does Bill Self still have the rule where if you want to wear a headband in game, then you have to wear it during every practice? That used to be a thing. It's like you can wear headbands, but then you have to wear it all the time. So that's interesting to me. I care a little bit about that. Rakease Passmore, he seems to be generating some buzz this summer with just how explosive and athletic he is, maybe a little bit underrated in terms of his recruiting profile and where he was ranked, but he's got serious bounce, and that excites me a lot. You know how I feel about dunking. That dunk was cooler than any dunk anybody had in a game. KJ may have had a couple cool ones last year, but that was sick, and that's different coming from the guard position, being able to get downhill and finish at the rim. So I'm going to say I care more about Rakease Passmore, but now I'm really interested to find out, okay, are you just a guy who's going to throw down 3 or 4 of those in transition when there's nobody around you this year, but you're
Texas
not really
Southern,
going to be
right,
but you're not really going to be a difference maker? Or is this just a glimpse into what you can do athletically? How does the rest of your game around it fill out? But that excites me. That excites me a lot.
It does as well, but honestly, it's the headband for me. Honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, is that Drew Timmy? That's kind of what he looked like with the headband on. Real quick, power ranking of KU players with a headband. Any come to mind?
All time?
I don't know. Who goes up there on the Mount Rushmore? Yes.
Mount Rushmore would have to be Aaron Miles.
I think for what it's worth, they have to be wearing it at KU, because I don't think Wilt Chamberlain wore it at KU. He did in the pros, but I don't think that counts.
I think you're right. I'm going to go Aaron Miles, J.R. Giddens, DeJuan Harris, Jeff Graves. Okay. I just bam, 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 bam. I don't think I'm missing anybody obvious, but those are 4 really solid.
Honorable mention, Carlton Bragg, I'm assuming?
No. He's just straight up off the list. Sorry, Carlton.
Next comment here. Brett Yormark. He was pro-private equity, or saying they're continuing to explore alternate TV windows. Which of those 2 Brett Yormark comments from Big 12 Media Days do you care more about?
Anytime you start using the word equity, you just throwing that around, I'm not going to care. I'm just telling you right now, I don't care at all. So by default, I'm going to go with the TV stuff. But I'll be honest with you, man. I know in this new world of college realignment, it's not even really new. It's been going on for over a decade now. But everybody, when talking about like, why are these schools making these decisions? Why are Texas and Oklahoma? Why are they doing this? And people will get upset. And then the other side will say, it's all about the money, guys. They're making way more money in the SEC. Oregon, going to the Big Ten. There's just so much more money, guys. It's all about the. I get it. I understand. It's all about. Thank you for breaking it down for me. I get it. I still don't like it. TV deals. I guess that's cool. Don't really care wherever they put it. I'm gonna end up watching it. But I'm just kind of not really interested in the conversation. Like, just let me know where I need to get my subscription, and I'll see you on Saturdays in the fall.
Yeah, I'm kind of with both of these things. It's just like, just tell me the end result, and then I'll figure it out from there. Okay, last one here. The Big 12 is launching an alumni council, or it being released that Kansas has 3 top 100 players on College Football 25 with the ratings for Devin Neal, Jalen Daniels, and Kobe Bryant, all 90 or better.
Obviously, we're going college football here. I have no idea what the
shocker.
first one was, the alumni council. Not interested in that at all, and very, very interested in KU having 3 players in the top 100. I saw a graphic that came out that said that it was listing the teams that had the most players in the top 100 of the EA college football game. And they were all the usual suspects like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, whatever. But the last team listed was LSU. They were the 6th team in this graphic, and they had 4 players in the top 100. Another way to look at it was, if they would have expanded this graphic to 7, is Kansas on there? Does Kansas have like an elite amount of top end talent? Like 3 guys on a team that's going to play 60, 70 plus this year. It doesn't seem like much. It really doesn't. But it's kind of shocking to hear that like KU has 3 of the top players in college football. We already knew it. And like a video game releasing their player ratings doesn't exactly validate like what we saw last fall and what we're going to see this fall, but it's still really exciting.
And 2 of those guys were recruited by the final Les Miles recruiting class. I mean, Brent Dearman bringing in Jalen Daniels and everything. So, looks like they left them with a nice cupboard, to say the least. All right, let's finish up here. Whose stat line is it anyway? We'll go over fun stat. This will be KU basketball related coming up on the other side. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks with whose stat line is it anyway? I'm going to give a stat. Nick's going to try to guess who the answer is. And this kind of circles back to our opening topic, the conversation, who's going to lead Kansas in scoring in 2024 to 2025? Because if you're picking AJ Storr or Rylan Griffen or one of these new players, how often does it happen that Kansas has a new player, quote unquote, that leads the team in scoring? So your question today is, how many times has a new player, and to be clear, what I'm defining as new player is a true freshman or a transfer in their first year. So I'm not counting Ben McElmore. I'm not counting Dedrick Lawson, both of them redshirted before they played. New player, first year at Kansas. How many times has a new player led a Bill Self Kansas team in scoring?
Okay, so 2006, the year when like Chalmers and Rush, those guys all came in for the first time. I'm pretty sure that was a brand new starting 5. So there's one. I think it was Brandon Rush that year. Mm-hmm. 2008, 2009, 2010. No. 2011. Trying to think who was there in 2011. 2012, no. Ben McElmore doesn't count. Andrew Wiggins is 2015. Who led the team in scoring in 2015?
Forgotten year.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I know Kelly Oubre was there, but I don't remember if he led the team in scoring or not. I want to say he did. It's going to annoy me. I'm going to say I know 2, and I'm going to say I'm forgetting 1, so I'm going to go with 3.
No, the correct answer was 2. I actually don't know who would have been 2015. Would it have been like Frank, maybe? No, it would have been Perry Ellis, of course.
Yeah,
Perry
that's
Ellis.
right. That's right. Okay.
So anyway, the answer was 2. It was Brandon Rush and Andrew Wiggins. And what do both those guys have in common? They were freshmen coming in. So a transfer, which I guess that's something that probably is bound to break now that we're in the transfer portal era. And it was darn close last year with Hunter Dickinson. But I find that interesting that a transfer to this point has never led a Bill Self Kansas team in scoring. And even if you do want to include the freshman, that means 2 times in 20 years, right? I mean, it's not very often.
In those 2 years with Wiggins and Rush, it was like a changing of the guard both times. Brand new starting lineups. You were returning virtually nothing from the prior season. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. I also think just trust. Like Bill Self relies heavily on trust. You have to earn that over time. Hunter Dickinson has it. We'll see about AJ Storr, Rylan, Griffen, the rest of the bunch. But, yeah, that's interesting. I thought it would have been higher, though.
Yeah, so to your point, bringing this all around, talking about trust, KJ Adams is going to be top 2 in scoring. We've moved up the list. Okay.
We're bumping him up, actually.
Yeah, we're bumping him up. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Where can you find some of your work, Nick?
You can check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. Could be wrong.
At Nick_Schwert on Twitter. I'm at D Johnson Radio. You can find the show here with Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcast, YouTube as well. We'll see you next time for another edition of LOJ. Later.